They say most people fear change, but longtime friend and today's guest, Lisa Elovich, is ready to offer a masterclass. From her standing as a Manhattan assistant district attorney, trading that in for time in the gym, which led to her role as one of the only female boxing promoters in New York State. And then, just when things got comfortable, she took on the global distilled spirits industry to launch her own tequila brand, One with Life Organic Tequila. None of it has been easy, with the exception of her new brand of tequila that is very smooth and heartwarming, just as she is. It is an hour-long podcast with a lot of memories, all fond for both of us, as our worlds intertwined more than 20 years ago. As she entered her boxing promotion career, I, as a reporter at the then Saratogian, we finally got a chance to sit down and look at that past and maybe a bit beyond. All right. So, Lisa Elovich, thank you so much for taking the time, the world traveler that you are, and longtime friend.
Yes.
And I wanted to bring you in during during October. See, there we go. October, Women in Business Month, as every month should be, just like every day should be Mother's Day. Women in Business Month, because I've known you through two iterations of your life. First one being 3 iterations now. So as an attorney and then a boxing promoter, and the latest wonderful life as CEO of One with Life.
Organic tequila.
Organic tequila. So for anybody who hasn't met Lisa Elovich, I know when I met you as a boxing promoter, I think you just got your working papers because you were probably 14 years old at the time.
I was 40.
Oh, young, go-getter, and that's how I knew. But then I knew you were an attorney from background from there, and then became a boxing promoter, and then along the way have life, kids, and now this. So you get a longer elevator pitch. You can go to the 12th floor with your elevator pitch, but what's the shorter Lisa Elovich story of attorney and promoter and now this great endeavor?
Well, I guess, in a nutshell, is that you need to follow your passion, and you need to not be afraid, kind of put faith over fear, follow it as far as you could take it, and not be intimidated about learning along the way, trial by fire. Every part of our life, as we grow and evolve, our passions change, our interests change, and we're just very different people as we grow. And so about every 10 years, I decided to change my career, and it keeps life interesting, keeps the brain working because you have to constantly try and figure new things out. And it definitely keeps you busy, but it really, for me, it makes life fun, and I like to challenge myself, as everybody does in different ways. But for me, it's always been about challenging myself by learning a completely new industry and throwing myself into it.
And if you look at the big 3. Attorney, boxing promoter, and now One with Life Tequila. In a sense, it's the careers and the education, the work experience kind of stacked up, hopefully, and I think it did, in your favor, because you have this education as an attorney. So the insurmountable amount of legalese that could overwhelm the average person, you're an expert in. Then you go into this foray of becoming a boxing promoter, a female boxing promoter, which is unfortunate. The tag you got tagged with because you were the unicorn at the time, and successful in that. So negotiations and things like that, but then marketing, obviously, for the boxing, and then with the One with Life. So how much fun was, when we met, it was as the boxing promoter. How much fun was it how easy or how hard was it to let it go for the next chapter for you?
That's a great question. It was so much fun going from being an attorney to a boxing promoter. And they kind of overlapped. Boxing started as my side hustle. And
Before there was a side hustle.
yes. So it started out just because I had gone into a boxing gym. I had gained 30 pounds with the pregnancy of my daughter, and I nursed her till she was 15 months old. So it took a long time to lose that weight. And so I walked into a boxing gym for the workout and became obsessed with the workout. It was unbelievable. How exhilarating it was and how fast the weight was coming off, and I was kind of transforming my body. And at the time, I was undergoing a separation, so I was kind of in a place where I needed boxing to get me through that emotionally. I needed it physically. And it also helped mentally because when I first walked in, I had no idea what I was doing, and I was so bad that I almost quit after the first time trying to do the speed bags. I was so uncoordinated, that and the heavy bag and mitt work, that you kind of had to train your brain to follow it in a certain way, and that was really challenging. So it really did transform me, all three, emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So I got really into the workout, started doing boxing 6 days a week, and then I started meeting boxers, both amateurs and professional boxers, also along with white-collar boxers who were just there to train. That's where the gym made money, but real boxers would be in there, and I was fascinated by them and their stories, and they had told me that nobody was promoting shows right now, so they weren't fighting, and the ones that were fighting were going into other people's territories as opponents, so of course they were going in with a disadvantage. And somehow I got recruited to do a fundraiser to raise money for female amateur boxers who were trying to go to the nationals and pushing for females to be in the Olympics. And so I said, all right, let me try. And I hadn't really done many fundraisers, but I had a lot of contacts in the area. So I said, let me call all my contacts and see if we can raise some money for female amateur boxers. And we did. Senator Bruno came at the time. He was a boxer in the military, so he loved the idea of helping out with boxing. And then his buddy was Jerry Cooney, who I had met for the first time at the fundraiser, and he came when he heard Senator Bruno was coming. And then once people heard those two were coming, everybody else started to come. So we raised a lot of money and had a great time, and introduced people that really didn't know about boxing in the community to boxing. And that was my first stint into the boxing world. After that, somehow I got recruited to get my license to become a boxing promoter.
Okay.
I went into New York City and met with the general counsel of the New York State Athletic Commission that regulates boxing. And he was very enthusiastic about me doing it. He was trying to kind of change the energy of boxing and get more people in New York to promote boxing, because at the time, there weren't a lot of people promoting boxing shows in New York for some reason, maybe because of the regulations or whatever it was. But after the Mike Tyson days, it kind of just died down. So he said, you'd be the only female boxing promoter in New York right now if you did this, and we're prepared to help you get through the process. So it just kind of took on a life of itself. After that, I went around to different people in the community and businessmen, politicians, and said, if I do this and I start to promote shows, will you support it? And there was an overwhelming amount of people that said yes. A lot of people said no. I don't like boxing. This is a family business. But most of the people that I went to said that would be great. And so I started to raise money from sponsors to put on my first boxing show, and kind of brought everyone together that I had met as boxers. And then all of a sudden, my phone started ringing. And 10 years later, I had thousands and thousands and thousands of, contacts from all over the world for boxing. I ended up signing 3 boxers. What I found out is there was some really talented boxers in this area. Shannon Miller had been boxing for many years. I had been introduced to him at the boxing gym, and to his dad, Bob Miller, who was an icon, and oh my God, it was in every person's corner as the cup man. And so I got introduced to him and Shannon. I had signed Shannon as a boxer, as a heavyweight, and ended up signing 2 other boxers, Brandon Mitchum, who was a middleweight, and Waylon Willingham, who was a welterweight. And it just kind of took on a life of its own. And then Mikey Farragon, who was a very talented boxer in the area, ended up fighting on a lot of my shows too as a lightweight. And people would come to see them fight. We had one fight with Shannon Miller with ESPN, which I know you were a part of. And Stan, I have to say that you were so helpful at press conferences, because we would sit there and introduce the boxers, and then I'd say, is there any questions? And nobody would ask any questions because a lot of them didn't know the questions to ask. And you were very familiar with boxing, and you used to ask really great questions all the time, because you really knew the mechanics behind what went into putting on a show, the training that's involved, the management. And it was so much fun. Shannon ended up fighting a few times on ESPN. You probably remember his heavyweight fight of the year against Vinny Matalone.
The fight.
It was the fight, the barn burner. Everybody in there was out of their seats and on their feet, cheering and just going crazy, because both Vinny and Shannon gave 100%. Of their energy, and you could feel that, how hard they fought, and they were both so strong, and they're both like punchers, so nobody was running. Shannon used to say, I could fight this fight in an elevator, because nobody was going anywhere. They were just punching and punching and punching, and Shannon ended up not winning that fight, but everybody had so much respect for him as a local guy, really, really talented boxer, because he was so brave. And he was in great shape. He had lost a lot of weight for that fight, and just did a phenomenal job. And it was so much fun. And luckily nobody got hurt. I tried for my shows to make even matches. And both myself and Paul Brown, I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yes. Referee
Paul Brown. Yeah, he's now a referee in the amateurs and the pros. He became a referee, and now he's a trainer in a boxing gym. He and I made the matches. And he was kind of a savant with boxing matches. He knew everybody's weight class, who they just fought. And we used Box Rec, which is kind of like the encyclopedia of boxing. It has every fighter, all their fights, what weight class they fought at, and how they did for each fight. So we kind of used that as a guide to make our matches, and we tried to make them really even. We ended up having a lot of draws, which people aren't always happy about because everybody wants a winner, but they were all good fights for the most part.
So when people talk to me, like, what do you like photographing? What do you like covering? Stuff like that. And if they spend 5 minutes with me, they're going to hear the story that I always tell of the Vinny Matalone Shannon Miller fight. So I called my mom and dad, who were at the time both still alive in Endicott, New York, and it was going to be on ESPN. So I called mom and said, I'm wearing a pink shirt. I'm going to be right by ringside. Can't miss me. So I'm there at the fight. This is my first live boxing match to watch, to see these two. And I came away with a couple things. One was the lighting is, we wouldn't want it as us on a TV set because it's glaringly bright.
Yes.
But at ringside, and you don't see this on TV, is the redness from each punch, each welt that each boxer undergoes. Because you just saw how red, Shannon was at times, or you'd see how red from each punch and how each punch had an impact. And it was I made Dan Raphael's, the ESPN boxing reporter's top 10 fights of the year.
It did.
His Friday night fights of the year. So I remember that fight, and then Shannon lost. So you go downstairs. So they had just, did we go 8 rounds then? Or was it 10? I think it was 8 at that level.
I think it was 8. He got stopped in the 8.
Yeah, it was 8. And you go down.
It was a 10-round fight.
It was a 10-round. And we go down, and we interview Shannon, being the local from Troy, and his dad, Bob, was there. We lost Bob recently, and that's heartbreaking. He was everything. Bob was everything to the area in local boxing. So if you want to know about boxing in this area, just look up Bob Miller, and then Shannon is right there. You go down to see Shannon, and Shannon's just sitting there in his trunks, and we go to talk to him. He's like, hang on. So he has to reach and put his glasses on, and he looks at the check. He goes, okay, that's good. He goes, yeah, what's the question? So this is, they just punched the entire time. Shannon loses. We go to see Vinny, who was the cousin of Guy Madelon at Clifton Park, who's still around doing his thing. And you go to see, and Vinny won. And Vinny looked good after the fight. When we went down to the locker room, he had, this is where that comes up with, is the egg. Under his eye was literally the size of an ostrich egg that he had from taking punches from Shannon. And that's where you saw how much went into this. Vinny won the fight, but you saw the price he paid to get there. So that respect was overwhelming. So I tell a story that my father, huge boxing fan, loved boxing, watched it every time, ABC and things like that. Saw some stuff down in the Triple Cities down in Binghamton. Literally one of the last conversations I had with him, I saw him the day after Christmas, and he died 2 days later. I got the call. That day, he still said to me, Stosh, that fight, those guys, they just beat the shit out of each other. He loved that
it.
Until, like I said, literally the last time of the conversation we had was about that fight and how much he loved that fight, because you don't see it. You see the nonsense, the dancing, and I understand it is what it is, But that fight just resonated still to this day. And this is 20 years. It's been maybe not 20, but it's been a while since that fight.
That was in 2006.
So it's been 15, almost 20. So we may have to rehash that. We have to get Vinny and Shannon in the podcast studio to go over that in 20 years.
They would love that. They still remember that fight like it was yesterday.
It was and to be in Saratoga Springs, and then during track season, and it was like, and this was the whole part of the promotion was take advantage of this huge crowd and bring them in. And like I said, Jerry Cooney was there, and so many people were there. Was that the rocket for you?
It was definitely one of the big highlights of my boxing career. My dad was there, and it was his 70th birthday, and we put him in the ring and gave him a championship belt. And I remember ESPN got really mad at me, because they're like, we're not supposed to have this stuff on and, get them on. And also I had Senator Bruno doing the announcing, and they didn't want that either. So I think I got into little hot water with ESPN. I tried to do a rematch, and ESPN didn't want the rematch for whatever reason. But it's crazy that they didn't want it, because it would have been a phenomenal rematch.
Oh, yeah.
It was their best heavyweight fight of the year.
Yeah.
So, but everybody's still talking about that fight, and all the boxing fans that I knew from, 19 years ago, when I talk to them about the fights, everybody always talks about that one. The other really great fight that Shannon Miller was in, which was also one of the highlights of the boxing career, was he fought for the heavyweight title, New York State heavyweight title in Madison Square Garden.
I went. I took the train down.
Yeah, you were there.
I was there.
It was the undercard of Klitschko.
Yeah.
And he fought a guy named Derek Rossi. Yeah. And that was also a phenomenal fight. It was a very different kind of fight than the one with Vinny Matalone. Shannon was much more mechanical for this fight, but he still wasn't backing down. I mean, he wasn't running. He's never run. And Derek Rossi wasn't either. That was a really great fight, especially in comparison to the Klitschko fights where he usually ran. A lot of heavyweight fights, they do what they need to do, and they prevent getting injured, so they run a lot. And you still see that in a lot of fights that are going on. But, yeah, so that was at Madison Square Garden, and Muhammad Ali was there. Laila Ali fought on the undercard as a co-feature. And so that was also a big highlight of the career, just being part of that, promoting. I was co-promoter of that fight. I actually only promoted that one bout, but it was still so exciting to be part of it.
That's it. And then you move on.
Yes. So I had about 25 cards that I had put on. Most of them were not televised. Most of them were club fights. 2 or 3 ESPN fights. Also, the one at Mohegan Sun. I don't know if you went to that one. That was with Andy Lee. And that was actually one of the real highlights of my boxing career because it was the only ESPN and televised fight that I did not have a co-promoter for. I always depended on the co-promoter, whether it was Lou DiBella or Joe DeGuardia, to bring in the ESPN and their top-level boxers and all of that stuff. And so I would fill the seats. I was known as the promoter that could fill the seats, but I didn't have any connections to television. But I kind of pulled a little bit of a hustle to get, I don't know if I ever told you the story, Stan, in order to get ESPN. So I really didn't want to work with another co-promoter. I wanted to do my own ESPN show. I wanted them to respect me because they really still didn't know who I was because they were dealing with the co-promoter. And so I called ESPN, and at the time it was a guy named Doug Lowcry who was in charge of ESPN, and he didn't like me very much.
He was still sore from Saratoga.
Yeah. So I called up and I said, listen, I have a great fight for St. Patrick's Day at Mohegan Sun. And I'd like to get Andy Lee to be the headline. If I can do that, would you put it on ESPN? And he's like, you're going to get Mohegan Sun and ESPN? He's like, good luck. Yeah, give me a call back and we'll talk about it. So then I called Mohegan Sun and said, listen, I have ESPN and Andy Lee for a St. Patrick's Day fight. Will you give me a site fee? And can I do this? And he's like, you have both of them? Yeah, we would consider that. So then the next hurdle was getting Emmanuel Stewart to give me Andy Lee. And I had a friend, his name is Russell Pelt, who's a Hall of Fame matchmaker and boxing promoter. He just wrote a book about boxing. He's a phenomenal guy. And I called him, and I knew that he was friends with Emmanuel Stewart. And I said, can you give me Emmanuel Stewart's cell phone number, please? And, I'll put one of your boxers or 2 or 3 of your boxers on this card if I get it. He said, sure. So he gave me Emmanuel Stewart's cell phone number. I called Emmanuel Stewart. I said, I know you have Andy Lee. He's the hottest new boxer. Would love for him to fight on St. Patrick's Day at Mohegan Sun, and I can get ESPN. He's like, really? I never heard of you. Who are you? And so I introduced myself. We ended up having several conversations. He's a big may he rest in peace, Emmanuel Stewart was a really, really nice man and a big talker. And I spent hours, countless hours on the phone with him, probably at least 5 or 6 hour-long conversations before he finally agreed to work with me. And he said, okay, I'll do it. If you can get ESPN and Mohegan Sun, I'll do it. So then it all came together, and I ended up having to make a match for Andy Lee. And I had just watched, remember the show The Contender?
Yes.
That was on ESPN, the reality show. And there was a guy named Brian Vera who had got knocked out but was a good fighter that lived local in New Jersey. And I had reached out to a cutman friend of mine, Danny Milano, who had him, and said, do you think he would be perfect for Andy Lee? People know his name from The Contender. They were a little bit of a different weight class, though. Brian Vera was a little heavier. And so Danny Milano said, yeah, we'll give you Brian Vera if you could make this happen. So it all came together, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this all worked out. And then Andy Lee was kind of a little overconfident because he had watched the video of Brian Vera, and he said, oh, yeah, I can take this guy. I'm a better boxer. I can take this guy. And Emmanuel Stewart said, you know what? I don't know. I think he's a little heavy. I don't think so. And he's a little heavy. And then Andy Lee talked him into it. And so he ended up going with Brian Vera. And then the night of the show, Brian Vera ended up stopping Andy Lee because Andy Lee, instead of using his great boxing mechanics, he's a very mechanical, great boxer, he got into Brian Vera's fight, which was punching, and he kind of, the weight difference made a difference in the end. Even though Brian Vera had lost the weight, he went back up after the weigh-in, and he ended up stopping Andy Lee. And so Andy Lee, right before that, the night before, Bob Arum had signed Andy Lee to like $1 million contract, and they were supposed to do really great things with him, and then that fight had changed everything, and I felt awful. Emmanuel Stewart and Andy Lee, surprisingly, were not mad at me. They're like, we took the fight. And then I didn't, because it was my first time working with ESPN alone and Mohegan Sun, I didn't realize that I wasn't getting my sponsorship money from them that night. And all the boxers expected to be paid that night. So I completely panicked. And I'm like, oh, my God, I need to pay these boxers, and I don't have enough money for the headline fighters.
Oh, my God.
So I went to ESPN. I'm like, is there any way you can pay me tonight? And they're like, absolutely not. And then I went to Mohegan Sun, and I just assumed that they were going to pay me from the ticket money that night. And they're like, no, we have to count everything. There's a process. We'll pay you next week. ESPN said, yeah, we'll pay you next week. And so I started going up to some of my dad was in the audience. Dad, could I borrow $30,000? No. And I went up to a couple of my sponsors. I'm like, do you happen to have able to get? Can you liquidate $30,000 for me tonight? And everybody thought I was crazy, and then said no. So I was kind of freaking out. And I'm like, really? I have a lot to learn about this industry, thinking that I could do this all by myself and just, by the seat of my pants. Luckily, Paul Brown had a great idea, and he said, let's ask the headline boxers if they can wait a week or so before they cash the check. And they were graciously agreed to do it. Otherwise, I would have been in a lot of trouble.
Oh, my God.
So I would have to say that fight was probably one of the, other than the Vinny Shannon fight, was the most memorable of my career because of what happened.
Oh, my gosh. And then you kind of hang up the gloves, I guess?
So, yeah, what happened was I'd done about 25 fights, and everything started to slow down in terms of the economy. 2008, we had a dip in the economy, so it was much harder to get sponsors. And so I had to... It was hard to raise as much money as I needed to raise, and I had this thing where I wouldn't put on a fight unless I raised the money for that fight, even without the ticket sales, because you never know what could happen with ticket sales. Sometimes you don't get the crowd that if there's a rainstorm, a snowstorm, or something happens. So the sponsorship wasn't as great anymore. My dad, at the time in 2011, was diagnosed with cancer. He ended up dying of cancer, and so that had really rattled me in terms of having the ability to have my law job and be a boxing promoter. So I slowed down quite significantly with promotion, and then they changed the laws because MMA was lobbying heavily to come to New York, and I actually helped write editorials, and I helped with MMA coming to New York in terms of, that end of it. But what I didn't realize is that the new laws were really bad for small and middle level boxing promoters. Everything was now more expensive. I think it was part of the compromise with bringing in MMA, and they had raised everything for the medicals, for the insurance, and it really kind of made it almost impossible for a small or mid-level promoter to keep putting on shows in New York. So it was the combination of all those things that made me move on, and it was just had started to run its course. But so many great memories, and boxing people really are the best people. They have the best hearts. Sometimes promoters and managers could be a little harsh. They weren't always so easy to deal with. And I have tons of stories, but I know this podcast is not 10 hours, so we won't go on with all those. But boxers and boxing trainers are the best people that I've ever met. They have the best hearts, and just really, I think it's because of the difficulty and the struggle of training and how much that goes into it. It really kind of humbles you tremendously. And also, when you're in a fight, you're really exposing yourself.
Mm-hmm. I have had, I was fortunate enough, I got an award from Section 2. Every year they have a media award for wrestling. And high school wrestling is that sport. There's no one to blame. It's
nowhere to hide.
It's one-on-one. You may think this move will work against your opponent, and you may have seen him 50 times. And you think, if I do this leg grab, I'll get him on his back or her on her back now. And it doesn't happen, And how much is the referee? Referee's there as much as safety as anything else. But it's you against them. It's you and your weight. It's you and your body. It's you and your training. And it's your decision a split second. So there is it's one of the purest things that's out there.
Yes, so pure.
Like
primal and pure.
Running's the first sport of all. Outrunning a saber-toothed tiger is the original sport of all. But yeah, wrestling and then boxing, there's no, who else? You look at the mirror. The mirror is your judge.
That's right. And I think that's what drew me and kept me in for so long in boxing was the authenticity of it. And especially coming from the legal world and the political world where there isn't a whole lot of authenticity.
Right. Because sometimes you've got to do an assumptive close to get the deal at Mohegan Sun. Like, oh, yeah, I've got
yes.
some lawyerness going on in that conversation that yes, ESPN's in. I'm sure they're in. I'm sure you didn't say they were. I'm sure it was
right.
You're
walking the line.
Yes.
But in the boxing gym, it's so authentic, and it's really boxing it's a beautiful sport, and it has so much cultural and historical significance. So it was a special time in my life, and I'm so grateful for the people that I met.
So the economy's not assisting anyone during that time period. So you can't get sponsorships. So you're like, okay, let me create and cultivate an entire new liquor and put my soul into this. And one with Life Tequila. So one with Life and then the Owl. So I'm just trying to, did the Owl come first and then One with Life came, or One with Life come and then the Owl was like, oh, this is the perfect, iconic, a marketing tool for me. So how do you go from attorney, boxing to Tequila Magnet?
So after boxing, my dad had passed away, and I took a year off in between Actually, it was more than a year. It was a couple of years off in between boxing and tequila. And I also have 2 kids at home, and I was raising them and getting everything situated. We had just moved to Saratoga from Rensselaer. And I was working at the time on the parole board. And I had to go to prison, 63 different prisons across New York State. And it was very dark and very heart-wrenching and very serious work. You know, it was all-encompassing, making decisions on whether or not somebody's ready to come back into the community. And it was a lot of sadness in that job and very, very serious. And I wanted to start, and it was a job that we did like three days a week at the time. Later, we had to go into the office more. But when I first started, it was like basically 3 days, and I needed to have another job. And I wanted to do something that was similar in excitement to boxing, but different, and something that was lighthearted and fun and social. And tequila had always been a metaphor for not taking yourself too seriously, enjoying your life, and just kind of having fun. And so I said, all right, let me start a tequila company. And at the time, there weren't a whole lot of people doing it. And I didn't know what I was doing. So I Googled everything I could about tequila and reached out on Facebook and said, does anybody know anything about tequila? Does anyone know any brand owners? And a couple of people had said yes, and they had given me contacts of people to speak to, a couple of brand owners who were really big in the tequila industry, and they were nice enough to really spend a lot of time talking to me about it. And next thing I knew, I was going down to Mexico looking for distilleries, and I knew that I wanted it to be called One with Life. So that came before the OWL.
Okay.
And I hadn't even realized at the time that the acronym was OWL. But the reason I chose One with Life is because I had been studying a lot of Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, yoga, meditation, non-duality, and that's my biggest passion in life. And so Eckhart Tolle wrote a book called The New Earth and the Power of Now. Highly recommend reading those books. They were life-changing for me. And he talked about what it means to be one with life, to be at peace in the present moment, to not carry around the past, not worry about the future, but be fully engaged in the now, because that's the only time that really exists. And if you stay in the now, instead of being in your head, like thinking about, oh, what did I do yesterday? What did that person say? What's going to happen tomorrow? If you just stay in the present, you can achieve a certain state of inner peace. And so because that was the most important thing in my life, I wanted to call it One with Life, based on Eckhart Tolle's teachings of presence. And just happens that OWL was the acronym.
When you talk about like the journey and the not an awakening, but like you said, your passion and your reading and your studying and things like that, was that always part of you, or is that part of with your dad passing? Because we all have to go through it, and we all handle it different ways, and it's still not easy. It's been 10 plus, and I'm, 8 and 5 on my end. And, they never leave us. And I think that's the important thing.
Yeah.
That I may talk about my mother and father more probably on a daily basis than I should have called them every day.
Right.
Yeah, because
there's
so many things happen. And I just go, how many times do I say my father was right, my mother was right, or my mother would have certain things, or my father would have certain phrases, that as a kid I'm like, that's so dumb. And they weren't dad jokes. They were just dadisms. And now I use them and people look at me and I'm like, yeah, it was my father. It's one of those things. But did that kind of, as you
Yes. And
cope?
my dad was my person. And, he was my biggest cheerleader. He was a lawyer. So he was my mentor for many things. And when I lost him, I felt really lost. And the whole One with Life philosophy helped me get through that. It also helped me get prior to that through my divorce. And it had so much significance in my life that it made the tequila seem more than just creating a spirit, an alcohol, because of the mission behind the brand, which was to spread that message. And then the other part of the tequila that kind of came together with the message was making it organic, the use of organic farming and sustainable farming. So when I went down to Mexico, I found a distillery that was organic, used organic farming, and was sustainably farmed. And it was a small distillery. They didn't do tours. They didn't sell. They weren't commercial. And I loved the family, and I loved their way of farming. So it all kind of came together. One with Life, organic tequila, with organic farming. And then the owl graphic, actually, this is how two worlds come together. The guy that did my posters for boxing, his name is Jeff Radin, and he's a really great graphic artist. He helped me with the graphics for the label. And so we went through like 100 different owls, 100 different trees before we came up with our owl in the Tree of Life.
It's the artistry of it is beautiful. And now, as things change, we talked about pivoting throughout, not only in my business, but also in your business as business changes for attorneys and then boxing promoters. And then as, a spirit producer pivoting and adjusting and being able to make that adjustment, we saw craft beer explode. We've seen spirits explode, especially in the capital region. And they're locally, it's vodkas and it's gins that are done locally. And then tequila is something different, and I think it's because of the sourcing.
It has to be made in Mexico in order to call it tequila.
But then the attraction to tequila, and it's as we're sitting here, I'm just looking across from you going, Lisa couldn't make anything else but tequila, because when you drink tequila, it's in the moment because it's a drink, and the ceremonial drink of tequila and the lime and in the salt and it's an experience.
It's an experience.
You don't sit there with ice and stare at the water or the fireplace or just think your thoughts. This is a community type of thing, and it almost always surrounds itself with joy. And I'm like, there's no one. Yeah, Lisa couldn't make anything else.
It's the only thing that I drink because of that. And after every boxing show, the fighters and their teams and I would always do a shot of tequila together. In fact, I may have dragged you into some of those shots of tequila back then too.
I might have partaken. And what other, again, as everything comes around, is my favorite tequila story is the night of rehearsal for our wedding. My wife Rita, 36 years in August.
Congratulations!
I can't believe she has not killed me yet. It's amazing.
Aww.
So Rita's a stressful person. So not only did I come back from the golf course the night of the rehearsal dinner looking like Larry the Lobster red because I didn't put on sunscreen, and Rita screamed from the third floor balcony, screams at my best man, Rob, I told you to watch him. And my best man's reply was, oh yeah, he burns. We go to rehearsal. My wife wants to fire Monsignor Owen, who was going to do our ceremony because he had no sense of humor. So this is how the night is going. And so we go to the rehearsal dinner, and Rich Nathan, a great friend of ours who is now in Rhode Island, who walked my wife down the aisle, He got 2 shots of tequila. And thank God for Rich and the tequila, because Rita was so much better after that tequila. It had such a calming effect on her.
It really does.
And we got through everything. And so that's why we always tell that story about tequila, that's probably what got me down the aisle with Rita. Was that shot of tequila took her down just enough to get us through. But I mean, Mexico, that was then versus now. I mean, what's it take to be an American female creating a business in another country, importing to the United States, because it's all got to be imported, licensing, regulations, packaging. I mean, is there a heavier lift other than building a rocket on Mars to fly to Earth?
It was stressful, especially the first couple of years. When I first launched, I was working a lot, both jobs, and I got so sick right before the launch. I came down with mono and pneumonia, and really, like, the sickest I've ever been in my life. Like, I thought I was going to die, and I realized that I couldn't do it myself. And so I actually brought in my ex-husband, helped me with the tequila company for many years. He's like the smartest person I know, and he's very organized, and I'm very unorganized. And for many years, he helped me get through some of especially the bureaucratic stuff that I found really frustrating. Because, you need to be licensed in each state. The label needs TTB approval, and then it needs approval from the state liquor authority, and it needs approval from Mexico. And there's a lot of bureaucracy and detail work that is definitely involved, and especially at the beginning when you have a new product. So that was very difficult for me. And I would say starting the tequila company and keeping it alive for the last 10 years has probably been the most challenging thing that I've ever done, more so than boxing and more so than law, because the competitors are all billion-dollar companies for the most part. Now, during COVID, it made things 100 times worse because George Clooney had just sold his company for $1 billion. And so every celebrity out there saw that he made more money from tequila than he did from all of his movies. And so they said, I want to do it. So they all partnered with hedge fund guys and private equity guys and distilleries. And the industry changed tremendously. And I was just right before COVID, like literally 1 month before the COVID whole thing started, where everybody was shut down. I had just made a deal with the management team, national management team at TGIF Fridays. And they were going to put me, one with Life Tequila, 3 drinks on every single menu nationally. It would have completely exploded my company and took it to unbelievable levels. And then during COVID, he resigned with his team. And so the deal was off. And then everybody started coming in with new tequilas, and it went from, maybe a couple of hundred out there to thousands. And not only were they coming into the market, but they were coming in with between $25 and $50 million, the average celebrity. And they weren't using their own money. They were teaming up with
everybody else,
finance guys. And so it's made it a lot more difficult to navigate the industry since then.
But you've got the best tequila.
I do. I think so. I think it's good. I think it's really good because it's organic and it's mellow. When you drink it, you don't need a lime and salt. You can just drink it at room temperature and it tastes good. You don't even need all the sugars from mixed drinks, but it's fun to have in margaritas sometimes. I hope you enjoy the apple cider margarita.
Yes, we'll have a tasting here.
Yes,
post-production.
So it's been very challenging, but it's also been fun. I mean, it's been like a party because every time I go out to do a tasting at a charity event in the capital region, I get to give people tequila, and that makes people happy, and we have fun, and we get into great conversations. And I've met so many people through this industry, and I feel like I've become a part of the community in the capital region through tequila. So it's had a lot of great things for me, and it's really also taught me how to run a business. And it's with boxing, it was a little different. It was like being an event planner, and so I planned for each event. And after the event was over, you kind of didn't have to think about it until the next event. Whereas with this business, you have to think about it 24/7.
What I enjoy is, again, knowing each other, and social media has been so helpful. Is it brings a smile because we want all our friends to succeed.
Yes.
And we want anyone who's not our friend just to carry on with life. But so many of your posts when you're doing the tastings and you're in Mexico and things like that, it's just joy.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Like, Mexico is my favorite part of this job because when I fly out to Mexico, it's a different type of culture. It's very lighthearted. They work really, really hard at my distillery. Like, I've never seen anybody work as hard as the Yimadors, the farmers in the agave fields. You know, they're out there at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're picking agave plants by hand with a koa, which is like a machete, and then ripping out the center. And at my distillery, they actually do everything handcrafted. They cook the plant in a traditional clay oven, and it's just such a labor of love, and it's so much work. But at the same time, everybody's lighthearted, and they're not stressed out, and that's what I love about being in Mexico. They don't even allow me to be stressed out. If I'm stressed out, they just ignore it or just calm down, have a shot of tequila. And so it's really fun being in Mexico. The agave farms are beautiful. These plants, it takes 7 years to grow before you can pick them and turn them into tequila. And they're like this beautiful blue-green color, and they grow up to 7 feet tall. And they're just breathtakingly beautiful. And so that's really fun. And when I go to Mexico, I go around to all the different distilleries, and everybody's friendly with each other, and all the liquor stores. They don't look at it like the competition that we do in the United States. It's more like they all want each other to succeed for the most part. And so you go to a distillery, another distillery, they'll say, you know, taste my tequila and let me taste yours. And it's just really friendly, non-stressful environment that I love being in. I'm lucky enough to have a good counterpart in Mexico, a colleague named Gonzalo Spindola, who I met early on, and he's the one that took me around to the distillery. So when I go there, he brings me everywhere, so I never have to be really traveling by myself. Mm-hmm. And I'm always back at my hotel very early because we usually start drinking tequila at like 10 o'clock in the morning. So by 6 o'clock at night, I'm done. But the funny thing is, I'm not a big drinker. I don't believe that anybody needs a lot of alcohol with tequila. You really should be sipping it slowly, and especially with a good tequila, you want to savor it and sip it slowly, and you want to drink consciously, just like you eat consciously. So, when you're eating, you wouldn't shovel down, 6 plates of food. So you shouldn't do that with tequila either. When I go out, I usually have 1 drink, maybe 2, and that's enough.
Mm-hmm. And the tequila itself's evolved, right? Because you kind of start out with your traditional, and then you've now got. How many you got?
I have 3. At one point, I had 5.
Okay.
But I started out with the Blanco, which is right out of the ground. That, of course, it takes 7 years to grow. But once you cook it and you distill it, it's ready. The Reposado, that's the second one, that is aged for 9 months in a bourbon barrel.
Okay, yep.
And my distiller used all different kinds of bourbon barrels, mixes them together. It tastes really good. And then the Añejo, which means old. In Spanish, the añejo is aged for 18 months in a bourbon barrel. So it takes on that real dark color and almost looks like a bourbon and has a lot of bourbon notes to it. So those are the three. At one point, I had an extra añejo, which was aged for 5 years in a bourbon barrel. And maybe I'll come back to making that at some point again, but it kind of got priced out a little bit. I have the three expressions right now: the Blanco, the Reposado, and the Añejo.
So you don't have the hedge fund. You don't have the celebrities. Product placement's important.
Yes.
We got to hook you up with Tyler Sheridan. We got to we got to kick out Tino's, and we got to get someone with life on the next show there for you. But you've been in movies, right? You got product placement.
Yes.
You got the win.
For free. Yeah, I was really lucky both times. I didn't pay anything. But one of the marketing tactics I used was to send around cases to, or at least a bottle, to every celebrity out there. And I would also send it to movie sets. I had a friend that knew a lot of the movie people, and she would say, send a case here or there. And so she said, send a case to Mark Wahlberg. He's filming a movie called Instant Family. And she knew the prop master there. So I had sent a case to the prop master. And the movie Instant Family has a scene where Mark Wahlberg's wife was so overwhelmed. She had just fostered 3 teenage kids, and so she needed to do a shot of tequila at the end of the day, take off the edge. And the movie actually called for whiskey, but they had put tequila in there, the prop master. And so Mark Wahlberg had said, at least this is what was conveyed to me, what's this? It's supposed to be whiskey. And the prop master said, well, it's a local upstate woman, small business, who sent us this tequila. And he said, all right, let's leave it in. That was before he had his own tequila company.
You planted the seed for him.
Yes. So it was in the movie Instant Family. And then there was another movie that came out right after COVID called Don't Look Up. And that was with Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep, Jennifer Lawrence. It had a huge cast. And same prop master. And I sent him, and they were filming in Boston at the time. And I drove to Boston with a case of Blanco, the Reposado. At the time, I had extra Añejo. And I had made little gift bags for each of the actors with their name, with a bottle of tequila and some swag. And the bags all said peace, love, and tequila. And they ended up putting my Blanco in the movie, in the last scene, where the world was ending. And the commentators who worked for TV did a shot of tequila. And I remember the prop master calling me saying, they may cut it because it's going right to Netflix. It's going to Netflix soon. And Netflix has their own sponsors. So I didn't know if it was going to stay in the movie, but because it was in the very last scene and that was a significant scene in the movie, they didn't cut it and the camera went right into the label. So that was that came out around Christmas, and I remember it being like this huge Christmas surprise, and I was so happy. And I went to see the movie 10 times in the movie theater and screaming when I saw the bottle. People thought I was insane in the movie theater, but I thought that would be a game changer for my brand, and it did develop a lot of street cred, and I had a lot of customers texting me and who had seen the movie. But it didn't really make that much of a difference in sales because there was no storyline behind it. So I think people didn't really remember the name. It was just kind of a cool thing.
Gotcha. Ready for the tough question?
Sure.
The hardest question I got. It's the last one. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
What's next?
Well, I'm still doing the tequila company, and I still love it, and I'm still passionate about it, and it's doing well. It's doing very well in the capital region. I made a decision to keep it small and not to scale it nationally for right now. So I'm enjoying it a lot more with not oversaturating too many different places. So it's really just in South Florida and mostly upstate New York and some small pockets of downstate like Montauk and the Hamptons. So I'm still focusing on tequila and enjoying that. But I also recently have gotten certified in teaching yoga, and I got a master's in Reiki, and I got certified by Eckhart Tolle in teaching presence. So I'm kind of now entering the healing world and taking on some clients that are interested in either yoga, meditation, Reiki, or personal development, and been slowly working on that as my side hustle to tequila.
The side hustle too. In a sense, because I know we were getting together on your schedules, like I've got this available and this available and this available. So this is why today works so great. So thank you again for coming in. Is it best of both worlds? Because where's Lisa? She's either in Saratoga or she's in Mexico.
Florida.
And Florida. Does it get any better?
I have a great life. I really do. I'm very grateful for my life, and I can't complain.
That's where we want to be at.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that they have this saying, if your life is not getting better as you get older, you're effing it up. I don't know if I could say a curse word on this podcast.
Well, we'll leave it where you left it. That way, I've got to
okay,
be.
So you don't have to bleep it out. You don't have to bleep it out.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think life should be getting better as we get older because we all have an expiration date, whether or not we want to look at it. Yeah. We do. So you have to look at it like, how do I want to spend my next 20 years, and how do I make the most of it? And if you don't like what you're doing, you're not passionate about it, then find something that you're passionate about, even if you have to stay at your other job. Follow your passion as a hobby. And life should be about enjoying yourself and having fun, and it shouldn't be about being stressed out.
So when we go out in the Capital District, we have to ask for One with Life tequila.
Yes, please.
Or move on. Go next door.
Or have water.
Say,
yeah.
Do we give them grief? Do we give them shit? Like, what do you mean you don't have One with Life?
I always find that you catch more sugar, more flies with honey.
Okay. I'll just say that I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I would really appreciate if you can bring One with Life tequila in, and
should.
They're distributed by Empire, and you can actually give the bar manager my number.
Okay.
Give him my name and number. I'm happy to help them bring it in, because we support all of the accounts that bring us in. We do promos, and I go there and I eat and drink and be merry at those accounts. So. Thank you for the plug.
That's where we're here. I mean, we've got John Norris on the craft brew trail, but I think we got to do the distillery thing and just very limited. We'll just, One with Life and then maybe somebody else and call it a whole trail. And then.
That sounds good to me. And I'm kind of a shameless self-promoter, so appreciate it.
So congratulations on another successful Women's in Business Month, and which has now spanned way too many years. As an attorney, as my favorite boxing promoter of all time.
Oh, okay. You're my favorite boxing writer of all time, for sure.
And creating this wonderful, wonderful tequila that is gorgeous when you look at it, and I can't wait to taste it. And I'm going to share this with the gang. So if you don't ask me, Stan, did you bring the bottle of tequila, then I know you didn't listen to the podcast for the family. So that's what I'm putting out there. So if you don't ask about the tequila, you're not getting any. But Lisa Elovich, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, Stan. It was really great being here.